Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cathrine. I'm currently heading the Research and Publication Department at Maritime Research Centre. So today I'll be speaking to you about blue economy and marine spatial planning and how the policy interventions that have been proposed through the underwater domain awareness lens can cater to the forest officials' needs and how all of these are connected. So I'll be giving you a glimpse of the interconnections. So why forest officers should care about the oceans? 70% of the India's coastal districts include forest areas. And these are mangroves, estuaries, backwaters, and all of these form critical forest landscapes. And these are impacted by riverine pollution, sediment flow, which directly impacts the outcomes, the productivity of these ecosystems. So climate impacts such as cyclones, sea level rise, etc., hit the coastal forest first, and the coastal forests have immense significance when it comes to blue economy. They provide livelihood. They are needed. Their conservation is necessary for climate resilience. So the Coastal Zone Regulation Notification of 2019 actually classifies mangroves as ecologically sensitive areas. And Environment Ministry and potentially other departments have an important role in conserving these essential ecosystems. And along with that, the involvement of Forest Department is critical. So what is blue economy? So blue economy generally has all the sustainable uses of ocean resources such as fisheries and aquaculture, shipping, biotechnology, tourism, energy, coastal protection, and a lot of other upcoming emerging industries such as deep sea mining, etc. So in 2023, this particular program, MISHTI, was introduced, which talks about mangrove initiative for shoreline habitats and tangible incomes. So the government is looking at avenues to make sure the ecosystem services provided by the mangroves and other associated ecosystems is also, integrated into this blue economy in a more systematic manner. So even our United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 14 talks about life below water, and this doesn't exclude your coastal zones because the wetlands, the estuaries, etc., contributes a continuum of the terrestrial and the oceanic ecosystems, and the line is kind of blurred when we talk about this particular domain. So the blue economy integrates development with conservation. And I will also talk about how this particular conservation is not just limited to the blue is not just limited to the ocean, but it also budges into your domain of expertise. And so blue economy, so when we usually talk about economy, people assume that we're going to be exploiting. But when this particular concept, if it's new for you, it's not exactly just talking about economy, but making sure that the economic gains that we are taking out of these natural resources from the oceans and coastal ecosystems we do it in an intelligent, balanced, and ecosystem-based manner. So that is one key highlight of blue economy. So what are the challenges today in the marine governance? So my presentation today will actually be taking you from how we look at the oceans through the underwater lens and trying to connect it to the terrestrial ecosystems, which you are more aware of already. So the challenges we face today are very similar to what terrestrial challenges are. For example, fragmented authorities, lack of data-driven decision-making and analytics, tropical challenges. Here, in particular, tropical acoustic complexities, which Dr. Das has already explained to in the morning session. Similarly, the pollution from land-based activities, mostly, these all end up in the oceans. The climate shock, increasing pressure on the ocean coast. So these challenges create an urgent need for integrated planning and considering all the different users, all the conflicts, all the cooperation required, all the different stakeholders, and to look at it not just in isolation, but as one system. So this is where marine spatial planning comes into the picture. So this is a concept which is defined as follows. It's a process of analyzing and allocating the spatial and temporal distribution of activities to achieve ecological, economic, and social objectives. So it's a public process where all the data from different departments, from different industries is collected and made sure that we arrive at a plan which is balanced, which where the conflicts are minimal, where the cooperation is maximized, etc. So think of MSP as a marine equivalent of land use planning. Just as you plan for forest, wildlife habitats, human settlements, etc., and industrial development, similarly, MSP plans for fishing zones, shipping lanes, conservation areas, tourism zones, renewable energy sites, etc. So why MSP should matter to forest officers? So according to the mandate of the Forest Department, mangroves is a um, key ecosystem that is concerning, and it's under Group 4 of the mandates, the categorization of the forest. And under these circumstances, marine special planning, which is basically the coastal and the marine ecosystem, and the forest officer who are concerned about the terrestrial ecosystem and also the coastal, we kind of meet at this particular juncture where the mangrove and coastal wetland protection becomes necessary. Regulation of sand mining becomes a key concept that we need to look at, and estuarine and river basin management. So the basin management is essential when we talk about the ocean governance also. Similarly, habitat conservation for marine mammals and migratory species are also linked to how the forests are managed. Similarly, cross-border biodiversity corridors, which I just now explained, the margin where the fringes of your terrestrial ecosystem and the ocean ecosystem collide. So these are all areas where the synergy is required between different officers, and forest officers are a huge important stakeholder in that respect. So according to the Indian State of Forest Report 2021, mangroves in India stored an estimate of 4.9 million tons of carbon. So, carbon sequestration is an important concept, and climate change regulation is not just a terrestrial responsibility or just an ocean responsibility. It is a combined cycle where all of us have to come together. And I think, and it is pretty evident that we need to look at the bigger picture, the whole continuum together. So the pollution and the salinity changes also pose serious risks to mangrove ecosystems. So the pollution salinity can arise from the degradation of the soil because of agricultural purposes, aquaculture, illegal activities, illegal aquaculture, etc. And even the deforestation could cause various issues concerning that. So as forest and wildlife managers, your understanding of the landscape ecology is critical. MSP depends heavily on the upstream and downstream management, something which forest departments are already skilled at. So what is a missing link here? So we already have various concepts such as the blue economy, the marine spatial planning. What are we missing right now at this stage? The climate change issues, the deforestation, these are a decade, these are our old problems. But now, why are we looking at what is the new angle, the unique feature that we are bringing to you today? This is the UDA framework. So it's a unified framework which is not just looking at security or environment, but looking at them together. Security, environment, economy, and disaster management. Using acoustic and non-acoustic sensing plus policy integration. So the capacity building that we're looking at is not just limited to acoustics. It's also non-acoustic, looking at the quality of the waters, the sediment management, the chemical parameters, the physical parameters, etc. So similarly, and even the biological parameters, how are the organisms getting affected? How are even the smallest to the largest, how are all the different organisms in the food chain are getting affected? So these are all something that we're looking at to make sure that we get a overall picture. So UDA brings in the technological backbone for MSP. Without data, MSP becomes theoretical. UDA provides a structured way to map the underwater world, something that has always been a blind spot for policy. So this is the UDA framework that Arnab sir has already explained, which talks about the different stakeholders, different projects, how we are taking up the projects, and how after the knowledge generation is done, how the knowledge dissemination is taken care of through acoustic capacity and capability building. So why UDA is critical for tropical waters? UDA takes care of complex bathymetry, making sure we make note of the high biological noises, ambient noise, variable salinity and temperature parameters are taken up, are monitored, and and also making sure we study the shallow waters, like what kind of signal distortion are we expecting? What is the pathway that we are faced with for the signal transmission? Similarly, what are the limits of traditional sonar and the navigation system? So these are all the tropical challenges that we face today, and these are not just limited to the oceans. These are also something that affects the freshwater systems, the river systems, the lakes, etc. So this is a general tropical challenges that we're talking about, and India's tropical oceans and rivers are acoustically challenging. And this affects security, fisheries management, and environmental monitoring. So what UDA proposes is a more resource economical, where we are not asking for a huge financial burden, but we are talking about something which is more efficient, which is the modeling and simulation method to overcome these challenges and generate usable insights for policymakers and other stakeholders. And these insights, if available, so the transparency of these insights is also something which becomes easy when we follow the UDA framework. So when we combine UDA and MSP, it becomes smart ocean governance. And so UDA helps in habitat mapping, fish stock assessment, pollution monitoring, submarine groundwater discharge mapping, marine mammal detection, early disaster warning, coastal erosion protection, and many more. So these are these are some of the applications of how both of them, if combined together, can help different stakeholders. So MSP tells us why and where to act, but UDA tells us what is happening underwater and how to act intelligently. So I've been talking about this land-sea continuum for a while, and there's a core connection. The watershed drives sediment and nutrient pollutants to the sea. The deforestation leads to excessive sedimentation, which can lead to coral and seagrass decline. Similarly, the marine ecosystems influence the rainfall patterns and inland biodiversity. The wetland and mangroves are carbon sinks and cyclone buffers. The ocean begins in the forest. So this is the tagline. The ocean begins in the forest. Every river carries the health of the forest into the sea. MSP and blue economy cannot succeed unless land and marine governance are integrated. So this is one case study where we talk about the Gulf of Mannar. So the Gulf of Mannar is actually a marine national park, a biosphere reserve, which has about 21 islands. So these islands are under the forest department, and they consist of coral reefs, mangroves, seagrass, etc. And right now, the forest department is involved in anti-poaching activities, reef monitoring, and habitat protection. So these mangroves, as I already mentioned, they are the land-sea connector ecosystems. And the department is trying to restore the mangroves in Ramanathapuram and Tuticorin, reduce the erosion and land-based pollution, enhance fish nursery grounds, etc. So these mangroves are also grounds for the early stages of fishes and other marine animals and plants. So similarly, the whole idea is to have a ridge to reef ecosystem governance, where the Western Ghat forest, which is influencing the coastal hydrology, is also maintained together. Similarly, the community is involved, and the SHG partnerships are also fostered, so that the community gets a sense of. So the forest department has a history of how they work with community, etc., and that's not just limited to terrestrial, but also we see it in the Gulf of Mannar. And this is where the UDA tools can come in handy, where we continuous monitoring, getting enough data to make judicious decisions will come into play. And here we can also connect the MSP's role, how different ecological layers for zoning decisions can be taken up by involving different stakeholders, having enough data, etc. So, sediment management is one important issue that comes up when we talk about the connection. The challenge is the excessive sedimentation, which impacts the estuaries, etc. Erosion hotspots affect the villages surrounding these places. The need for upstream forest and watershed interventions so that the downstream is protected. So the solution right now that we are proposing is a UDA-based sediment categorization study, etc., which is ongoing. So forest officers must also be a part of the coastal decision making. And the riverborne sediments determine the marine productivity, navigation safety, and coastal erosion. So this is a very critical point that we must take note of. The health of the mangroves is directly influenced by the upstream forest and watershed management. And the freshwater flow and sediment supply could weaken the mangrove ecosystem and by extension, marine economy that they support. The mangrove protection and fisheries involve, so 80% of the marine fishes depend on the mangroves at some stage of their life. The problem which we identify right now is the illegal aquaculture, encroachment, etc., which can reduce the fish stock. What could be the MSP response? MSP can identify the zones where which needs to be protected, which are allotted for different activities, etc., and the continuous monitoring alongside that. And the coastal buffers could be allotted. Similarly, how UDA can contribute is monitor the habitat quality, make sure that the degradation is minimized and the illegal activities are controlled. So mangrove conservation is fisheries conservation in a way. It's not limited to fisheries conservation, but we can at this point say that mangrove conservation has an important role in fisheries conservation. And MSP combined with UDA enables continuous monitoring. I would also like to point out here that the mangroves make up about 0.15% of the country's total geographical area, according to the State of Forest Report 2023. And now let's also talk about the marine mammal conservation. So we have a lot of species at risk at present: dugongs, dolphins, porpoises, etc., which are impacted by anthropogenic noise. So what are the threats right now? Shipping, trawling, seismic act. These are all ocean-based threats, but there are various terrestrial threats as well. So because marine mammals require large connected habitats, and forest officers can contribute through landscape and seascape planning together and integrated planning, data sharing on biodiversity corridors, participating in MSP working groups, integrating mangrove, river, and forest management with marine zoning. So acoustic monitoring could help you identify the mammal presence, and the MSP could help you designate different areas as quiet zones to make sure the acoustic the acoustic pollution is reduced. And the forest officers managing these coastal sanctuaries can use the data from the UDA framework for enforcement and habitat protection. So marine mammals, such as Ganges river dolphin, Irrawaddy dolphin, are protected under the Wildlife Act, which places the enforcement responsibilities, surveillance, habitat protection, anti-poaching under the Forest Department. So this is where the Forest Department is asked to come in as a stakeholder, asked to participate in making decisions. And if they don't have the background, the context, the knowledge about what is happening and why it's happening, then the synergy between the different stakeholders gets disturbed. So what are the policy interventions that we're looking at and what already exists? So we already have the integrated coastal management zone, the deep ocean mission, Sagarmala and Bharatmala linkages, MSP initiatives, national, and here the UDA can act as a cross-cutting enabler. So we are not bringing anything new or suggesting a paradigm shift, but instead, whatever is existing, how can we make it more efficient? How can we make it more, make sure that the expected results are obtained? And we are at par with global standards. Policy is now moving towards integrated solution. And your involvement ensures that ecological priorities remain central to these frameworks. So what are the recommendations that we can come up with? So strengthen the integrated planning, participate in MSP exercises, use UDA data for habitat conservation, develop joint patrols with coastal police, forest units, etc. Support, and in some areas it's already happening, but just putting it out there for making it more institutional. Support acoustic capacity building, promote mangrove-based climate resilience, community-driven coastal biodiversity monitoring. So you already have the governance mandate in most of the coastal districts. This is all about adding new tools, efficient tools, and partnerships to strengthen the initiatives. So what are the future opportunities? Nature-based solutions, eco-tourism integrated with MSP. So everything that you do, we have to now look at it from an integrated perspective, and that integrated perspective comes from MSP. Managing the marine biodiversity corridors, digital empowerment, digital transformation, low-cost sensors, and citizen science. So future is all about combining the technology, policy, and community action. UD Enable MSP is a platform to bring all of these together. So I'd like to conclude my presentation with a summary slide where, we talked about the blue economy, what are the opportunities and the responsibility. We talked about MSP and how that is important for the integration and why UD is important. It provides the intelligence required. And what are the forest officers in here for as stakeholders? They are key stakeholders in the land-sea continuum. Our oceans need informed guardians. With your expertise in ecological management, forest officers are essential contributors to India's blue economy pathway.